Communication is key. It is episode 73, season 7 of For Our Edification. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of For Our Edification. I'm Eddie Francis. I am so pleased that you have chosen to check out For Our Edification, your personal leadership podcast, where we have real stories about real moments that transformed people's careers. For Our Edification is brought to you by Edify Ventures. Show them who you are. Ask me today about executive speaking coaching to amplify your personal brand and to give voice to your leadership. Email me today, eddie@eddiefrancis.com, to set up a 30-minute, no obligation, free brainstorm call. Past episodes of For Our Edification are available at eddiefrancis.com, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Now, connect with me as well. I'm now on Substack at EddieFrancis06, and you can also connect with me on Instagram, Threads, Fanbase, and I would love to holler at you as well on Facebook, where you can connect with me at Eddie Francis Unscripted. And, coming into season 7, I'm stepping into my purpose. Now, seriously, I wanted to focus more on storytelling. I wanted to leverage my love of communications, strategic communications. And I thought about a situation that I was in, and I wondered how much better that situation had been if both my leader and I had been more intentional about creating a productive working relationship. And there's a specific post that I saw on Threads that sparked a lot of this thought. So let's talk about that. The views and opinions expressed on For Our Edification do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the hosts, guests, or any entities with which we are affiliated. So I'm hanging out on Threads, which is becoming, one of my new favorite social media platforms. There's like this rebirth of Black Twitter happening on Threads, but that's not what this episode is about. I saw a post where someone wrote, "How do you teach someone to be more organized? Is it possible? Or is it one of those skills that you either got or you don't?" And I kind of thought for a second about whether or not I really wanted to respond to this, but I was feeling helpful, which is when I normally probably shouldn't respond. But I think this time it wasn't so bad. I decided to respond, and my response was, the key is time. As someone with ADHD, I've learned that setting aside time to arrange things such as items, lists, my day, attire, etc., is key to establishing habits. It's tough, but I do what I do. Now, I became curious about other responses. And honestly, a lot of times when I respond to social media posts, I might not necessarily care too much about what the other comments are because I don't want to see something that's going to set me off. But I decided to check out these responses, and one response that I kind of chuckled at went along the lines of, "I'm really organized at work, but I'm not organized at home. Somebody please come help me organize my house." But then there were two other responses, and a couple of them said this. One person said this specifically: "You have to want to get organized." And there were a couple that alluded to organization being something of genetics. Now, looking at those responses and then looking back at the original post, I'm not going to lie, I started to get a bit annoyed, especially when I started to read the original post again, and I started to think about the tone of it. And I did notice that this person only responded to people who affirmed what it seemed that their intention was behind the post, which was to basically say, If you're not organized, then you got a problem, right? That is how I read it. That's my interpretation. Um, but the one that said you have to want to get organized, that one annoyed me because as someone with ADHD, I do want to get organized. The issue is I have historically not really understood what being organized really meant. And I'll give you a quick example of that. I was I was working for this company, and so I was late for this presentation. My boss calls me, jumps in my stuff about it, and they said, Eddie, you have to get more organized. I kid you not. When I heard that, in the back of my mind, I'm going, what does my being late have to do with being organized? Because I thought of organization as this one dimensional thing. And that was one of those times when I was thinking, well, I want to get more. I think I'm organized. I just don't understand why I was late. And I truly did not understand why I just couldn't get myself together enough to be on time, right? At the time, I had not been diagnosed with ADHD. So that is a big asterisk here. But then the others that said that is genetic. I mean, I don't know. I don't know enough about organization to know whether or not it is genetic, but that still got on my nerves. And I was trying to figure out, as someone who has tried to lean more into mindfulness, thanks to my therapist, I was trying to figure out what made me so upset, because I'm sitting here getting upset reading these comments, and I'm going, well, why am I upset? Should I be upset? And then it hit me. I was triggered. I was triggered because I thought about my last dismissal from a job. And it was a very upsetting event for me. And part of the issue was a huge disconnect between me and my then boss, my former boss. And part of that disconnect is that they seem to be a pretty organized person, and I'm not. And I was ashamed of my struggles with organization at work, especially since I was in the leadership position. And I was also embarrassed by being let go. But I was most embarrassed by a couple of big projects that I just fell flat on because of my lack of organization. I felt as if my struggles with organization were weaponized. And then I started to think back about, okay, so how could this situation have been better? Now, to be clear, I really don't think that this honestly might have changed much in that situation, because I do think that this leader's mind was just simply made up about me, period. And also, I think their mind was made up about how they wanted to lead, period, which had nothing to do with me. And I started to ask myself, what if that situation had been one where the leader had a sentiment like, Eddie, let's figure out how to get the best out of each other, because I really don't understand how you work. And I really need you to help me do this job. So let's figure this out together. Another option would have been if the leader had said, let's work out how we can communicate better with one another. When it comes to communicating, I mean, how do you communicate? Are you a texter? Are you an emailer? Do you need to pick up the phone? I mean, what is it? Are you straightforward when you speak? What is it about? I'm straightforward. If we had those two types of conversations with one another, I just wonder how much different it would have been and how much it would have benefited where we work. And then what if the leader said, hey, Eddie, here's what we're going to do. Whenever we do an assessment, I'm going to assess you on your performance, but it's going to be on KPIs, key performance indicators, that both you and I agree on. And we're going to talk through what those KPIs need to look like and why they need to look the way they do. And I'm going to be clear with you about my expectations. What if there had been that kind of clarity? Because I feel as if what happens in a lot of situations between a leader and a follower, a manager and a direct report on the job is that there's a set of assumptions about people's competencies in both directions. And a lot of times those assumptions are never challenged. Now, to be sure, I do not think that a leader and a follower need to be best buds. I'm not talking about folks going to happy hour with one another, after knocking off work on Friday. I'm not talking about if the leader is in a relationship, the follower's in a relationship, they go double dating. No, 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 no. I'm talking about a productive working relationship. A productive working relationship is built on trust. And one of the issues that I had in my last situation is I did not trust the person who was leading me. I just didn't. I didn't trust the person who was leading me because of how I felt about our relationship. But then trust is built through communication. And this is my big point here. My huge point here is that communication is currency for people to improve their personal leadership, their personal growth and development, so that they not only benefit themselves, but they benefit the people around them. Communication is currency for that in all directions, whether you're talking about the personal leadership of the leader or the personal leadership of the follower. Communication sparks an exchange of ideas. It sparks stories. And stories can be something that just makes something abstract very real. I remember sitting around with my team. We were eating cake actually because it was someone's birthday, and I decided to buy a cake. And so we're all sitting around. It's like the last half hour of work, and I'm telling everybody, okay, you know what? Let's just kick back and have some cake with one another, because I actually wanted to have a conversation with the team. And as we're sitting there and we're talking, we're having cake, and we actually kind of ran through some ideas we had about stuff as well. Um, I was really confused about something that they did not understand. And what I did was I thought, well, here's why I am the way I am. And I told this story about a situation that I had gone through with the leader that was just not a great situation for me. And I really don't remember the exact story I told, but I told them this story about the not being in this great situation and how upset I had been with that leader. Yes, you're seeing a pattern here, and I'll get to that in just a second. But I was upset with that leader. And the reason that I led the way I did, the reason a lot of times that I led with empathy, is I didn't want anyone to feel the way I feel, which was feeling as if they didn't have value on the job. And when I told that story, it really helped people understand my approach. And they said, "Oh, okay, well, Eddie, one of the things I remember someone saying to me, well, you know, you asked us to do this, but we're not exactly clear on what you need and why you want us to do it." And I said, "Oh, okay." And so I went and I gave them that, that directive that I was trying to get them to do. But my point in that is that in telling that story to them, it opened up conversation, and it also helped us walk through some ideas, but it also opened up opportunities for them to communicate with me honestly. Communication is the key to understanding how people process the world. And even when it comes to the workplace, it is important to understand how someone processes the world, because the way that they process the world impacts the way that they work. It impacts the ideas that they have. Now, you can agree or disagree with the way that they process the world, but what's important is that you understand that they do process the world in a specific way, and that way is the reason for what they do and what they say in a lot of situations. Nothing is perfect here, but I'm a big fan of saying over communication is better than under communication. Now, one thing that having ADHD has taught me is that success is a team sport. And the way a team functions is by being able to exchange ideas, thoughts, information. One thing I've learned about myself is that I need thought partners to help me organize my thoughts without judgment. This is where my good friend Claude comes in. Claude is the bomb. And, I actually did this post one day that my wife and I talk about Claude like he's the homie from work. I mean, we seriously talk about Claude like he is a real person. I kid you not here, right? We believe in Claude. But the thing is that being able to have that thought partner is what makes me be able to flesh out ideas, to check myself, and to make sure that I am organizing myself in a particular way. And, you know, not being judged is everything. Not be, judgment is horrible. It can go off the rails so easily for me. And for someone to be able to sit down and to say, well, Eddie, this is what I think of what you're doing without any sort of judgment attached to it is really golden. This is where having a therapist has been golden for me. This is how I even found out that I have ADHD, being able to communicate and to share my thoughts without judgment. The way this even happened is in one of my sessions, I was talking about how frustrated I was about going through a training program. And I was about to crash and burn in this training program because it got to a point where we were doing these assignments and they started to stack up on me. I was nervous. Again, I'm dealing with, a lot of the shame and the embarrassment from not doing my job as well as I wanted to in my last job. And so I'm telling my therapist about how I just freaked clean out when I was doing this training. And they said, okay, well, tell me about what happened. And I told them about how the way that I got back on track with the training was closing the door to my office and just getting hyper focused on what I needed to understand and going through things line by line in the training and taking my time and my writing and all of that good stuff. And they said, have you ever thought about the fact that you just might have ADHD? And that opened the floodgates of possibilities for me, because I just needed to know that my brain was doing something and I needed to understand what it was doing. But I needed someone to be that thought partner. I needed someone to approach me without judgment so that I could move forward in some way. So let's be clear about something else here. Your leader is not a therapist. Your leader should not be a therapist. Your leader has a whole nother job. But even the slightest hint of support at work goes a long way. We spend so much time at work. And I know that we shouldn't determine who we are by what we do, but it does happen. It is a reality. And one of the ways that support can happen is if the leader sets the tone for support and what support looks like. So while the leader is not a therapist, the leader does set the tone. The leader does not lead alone. And again, this goes back to what I said, that success is a team sport. So to take productivity to the next level, I want to make a suggestion to you. The suggestion, whether you are a leader or a follower, is this: make 5 promises. For 2026, Make 5 leader follower promises so that where you work or your community or your professional association or your fraternity or your sorority or your community organization or your church or your mosque or wherever you are, make 5 promises so that the organization or the institution itself flourishes as a result of your work with one another. So here's promise number 1. Hit the ground listening. Don't hit the ground running. Yes, I really said that. I know. Whenever people talk about hitting the ground running, it just sounds so sexy, doesn't it? I mean, everybody's just like, hit the ground running. You just get this look that everybody's just Speedy Gonzalez and they are just running through tasks and they are getting it done. Everybody get her done. Everybody's getting, yeah, that's fine. And it just sounds so sexy. And it just sounds like they are going to take charge. And yes, they will take charge. But taking charge to a degree can be a bit of a setback because when you hit the ground running, here's what happens. You miss things because you're so busy running. There's so much value, though, to slowing down and listening, whether you're the leader or the follower. Listening to one another, taking that requisite time to understand who you're dealing with. Not only so that you can support this person, but you can give them feedback that is going to be helpful. I can't tell you how many times I have sat and I've listened to someone. And in listening to them, it would be, I don't know, months later, we're working on something together. And something hits me about that thing that I heard them say. And it makes me realize, oh, that's why they do this that way. Because this is the kind of person they are. They told me this the first time we met. Now I get why they work the way they do. So promise number 1 is hit the ground listening. Don't hit the ground running. Promise number 2, behold the magic of the question. This has probably been one of my biggest professional struggles and personal, honestly, is not asking enough questions. I mean, forget about the kinds of questions. Actually, when I get into asking questions, I can figure out the right kinds of questions to ask really quickly. I just got to start asking them. And I have missed so many details. This is actually part of my struggle with organization. Not asking questions. Not asking questions. If I had done it more throughout my career, I am pretty sure I would have figured out a whole lot of things about getting organized. I would have learned a lot about getting organized. But questions open doors for collaboration. And at the same time, they kill the one thing that I probably hate the most in this world: assumptions. Nothing stalls a team like people who think they know the answer. I think the 3 worst words on any team are when a sentence starts with, I thought you. I think those are the 3 worst words. So behold the magic of the question. Ask questions so that things can be clear. And by the way, asking questions gives you a great opportunity to go back to number 1, to hit the ground listening. Number 3, promise number 3, make constructive feedback the prize. Don't make it, just part of your relationship. Make it the prize of the relationship. Help people move forward with confidence by giving them feedback that is actually going to help them do what they do better. I have been the one who has heard on so many occasions, Eddie, you did this wrong. Eddie, this isn't helpful. Eddie, why did you do that? Eddie, not constructive stuff, but stuff that has basically told me, you just don't know what you're doing. And boom, that's it. It just gets left at that. That is the worst feeling, for someone to just leave it at, you did it wrong. So make constructive feedback the prize of your working relationship. Yes, that means you have to take some extra time as a leader and as a follower to figure out what to say to help someone move forward. And yes, I know that there's only so much you can do. I agree with that. I do agree that it gets to a point where you just have to kind of turn the faucet off. And that just has to be it. But the first option, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to feedback, is constructive feedback. The best question that I have ever asked in my career in the performance reviews that I was holding with my team was at the end of the performance review. I knocked everybody out of their seats when I asked them this question: what can I do to be a better team member to you? That question opened the floodgates for them to not just give me feedback, but to give me constructive feedback. And it was extremely helpful to me. All right. Your fourth promise: let there be an exchange of understanding. One should learn how the other works. One should figure out what keeps the other up at night and what gets the other going in the morning. The biggest understanding that any team can benefit from is what motivates each other. If you can understand what motivates each other, then you can understand how to work well together. But then also, it's about understanding what stops the train with people. What gets people to a point where they just can't work well because there was something that was said, or there was an action, or there was something like that. And so being able to have an understanding and that exchange of understanding, when I say an exchange, I mean you actually talk about understanding what motivates each other, then you can get excellent results as a team. So promise number 4 is let there be an exchange of understanding. And promise number 5, express appreciation. HR research still shows that while, yes, people want to get paid, people definitely, their top thing at work is wanting to get paid and compensated for their talents. They want to get compensated fairly. But if you can't give me that, HR research still shows that people want to be appreciated, and they want that appreciation expressed in some way. Thank you goes a long way. You did great goes a long way. I enjoy working with you goes a long way. And if you don't enjoy working with the person, I appreciate the work that you put in. That goes a long way. You don't have to like them. But if you dislike them, but you appreciate the work that they do, then that goes a long way as well. And that actually might break down some barriers. Writing that card to someone for their holiday, a holiday that they celebrate, that can go a long way. But whatever you do, express your appreciation in some way. So we have these 5 promises, and I want to go back to that post that I read. How do you teach someone to be more organized, as what this person wrote? Is it possible to, or is it one of those skills that you either got or don't? Now, I'm not sure what communication looks like between this person and the people who they are trying to teach to be organized. But my guess is this. My guess is that if this person were to express some understanding, if this person were to express open-mindedness, and if they were to express a sense of partnership, then helping someone to be more organized, not teaching them, could probably accomplish some of the goals that they would like to accomplish. So look, I hope that this is helpful to get 2026 started. I am doing a thing now, and that thing is a LinkedIn newsletter. It's called Edifying the Brand. It's for leadership tips and insights to strengthen reputation, identity, and value through strategic communication. There's a link in the show notes to it. Also, there's a link at eddiefrancis.com. Sign up today so you can get some of the good stuff. All right. So I'm really happy again that you chose to hang out with me. If you made it to the end of the episode, congratulations. Past episodes are for our edification are available at eddiefrancis.com or YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. For Our Edification is presented by Edify Ventures LLC. Please like and follow and share this podcast. I was told that I need to figure out, a signature sign off. So I got to figure out what that is. So I don't know. For Dr. Halim Malik Francis, I'm Eddie Francis. Thanks for joining us on For Our Edification. Peace in New Orleans. No. Peace in New Orleans East. No. Pace, it's Latin for peace, but or two fingers, or I'll check you later, or I don't know. If you got any ideas, tell me. Bye.